G'day listeners, welcome to Barkarati, the sailing podcast. My name is Jordan Spencer. It's that time of the week where we get to hang out with some really cool sailors, but of course I have to share the microphone duties with my two idiot mates. So let's welcome in Mr. Brett Perry.
Greetings, exalted one.
BP.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be.
Yeah.
Because I don't know where I am right now. I feel like I've just jumped into a letterbox, spun around, got out of my boat building gear and into my podcast gear. That's how quick this is all happening today.
You're a man of many talents.
Oh, tell you what. And I've got to apologise for last week, sort of put on the spot a little bit about the X2, talking about the project. But I can say that I'm very happy to talk about it today.
Oh, good. No worries. Cool, man. Let's bring in the other bloke.
He had a voice that could make a wolverine purr.
Mr. Nick Bice.
Top of the day, gents.
G'day.
Pleasure to be joined by your good selves. Well, the pleasure's all yours, as a matter of fact.
Of course.
But
Every week.
good to hear, BP. It's coming along well.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to some more in-depth stories. Saw you post plenty of photos on our little internal Slack chat, which is, coming together. Looking forward to seeing that thing in. And, of course, on this side, down in the southern vales of South Australia, we're getting prepared for the Tinkle Classic, of course, which is about to take off in 2 weeks. I'll be talking about that a bit later as well.
Oh, you will be.
Gordon, what do you got to talk about? We'll talk about some bloody 505s or something.
505s, yeah.
Oh, I got a little bit more than that, actually.
What do you got?
Just wait and see.
We'll save it, I'm guessing. Good.
He's going to leave us hanging.
I've just been thinking, I've got an idea, BP.
Right.
We need
It's not
representation.
unusual.
Yes.
You've always got ideas. You're an ideas man.
Oh, dear. All right, well, speaking of ideas, man, we should bring in our guest. I'm actually really excited to get our guest in. I can't wait for this discussion. Bring him in?
Yeah, go on.
Okay.
We shall.
So our guest for this week is someone we've been thinking about having on the show for a long time. He's an icon of our sport. There's no question. He'll probably laugh at that, but he genuinely is an icon. He's at every event. He's got the inside goss on pretty much everything that's happening in the world of sport. He's been involved in the world of our sport. He's been involved with sailing for at least 20 odd years, probably closer to 30 now. And he produces his own YouTube TV show now called Planet Sail. We've had the pleasure of spending a lot of time with him over the years, and we're very keen to have a chat because we know all these crazy little stories he's got that we want to talk to Mr. Matt Sheahan. Welcome to Barkarati, mate.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to be here. And as I was listening to that, I thought, bloody hell, he sounds like quite a cool guy. And then I realised you meant me. So, anyway, sorry to burst your bubble on that one, or anybody else's who thought, bloody hell, this sounds really interesting. And then Matt Sheahan, him. Oh, right, okay.
Oh, that's bloke.
30 years. If only I'd been it'd been that short. But anyway, there we go. I started when I was 4, and I had a rather significant birthday last weekend, which I'm currently in dispute with my birth certificate over.
Oh, wow.
Because I don't believe the number on it.
Yeah.
But that does mean I have been sailing for a rather long time, since 4.
It's okay. It's okay to live in denial, Matt.
I was referring to your media side, I guess, is what I think you've said.
Oh, gotcha. Right. Yeah. Well, even that's a fair bit longer than that. But anyway, there we go.
I was actually just driving home from the factory today, and I thought that's going to be an interesting discussion because you're on the other side this time. You're the one being talked about.
That is really weird. I mean, that doesn't even happen in my own home, to be honest. I mean, only when things have really gone pear-shaped, then I get talked about a lot, and it's not good.
Well, enjoy.
So what happened at 4? How come you started sailing?
I started sailing with my dad, who had he was actually a very successful long-distance cyclist, actually. He used to race push bikes back in the day. And he did a lot of long-distance stuff. But anyway, he decided to get into sailing and started sailing and had my mother crewing for him. And my mother's absolutely terrified of water and still is. And the minute I showed any interest in going sailing, she said, "Why don't you take him? He wants to go." And that was it. Off I went. In fact, I think when she had my sister, who's younger than me, I think that was the excuse not to go sailing. So
wow.
Pretty good excuse, one would admit. But I started then and then raced with him from that point onwards.
I have to ask, what were you racing in, mate? What were the classes?
The first boat, I'd be surprised if you've ever heard of it down there.
Oh,
I don't
don't
think
be surprised.
it's down there. It was called an 11 plus. It was a clinker, yeah. It was a.
No
I'm
response.
going
No
to stop you
response.
there, Matt. You've obviously have you heard about this thing called a Etchel Mold 11? It's actually like an Etchel Plus. So
It's the original.
It's the original Mold 11.
Oh, Vicey, let it go.
Is it clinker built then?
Yeah.
No, just about half a foot longer than anything else.
Oh, good way to bring it back.
Yeah, sorry, mate. Sorry.
Go back.
Go on.
Ignore that stupidity. So the 11 plus.
Yeah. So it's an 11 plus, which was a clinker built, wooden clinker built boat. Very simple, a little bit like the very old National 12s or a very old Merlin rocket, but nowhere near as pretty. Nowhere near as pretty. So we had a couple of those, and then we had all kinds of things: lasers, fireball, mirror, yeoman keelboat, and then we moved into big boats after that. But I still race dinghies now, but that's what we had back then.
Yeah. I mean, that's the good thing about you, mate. Like you know, you still test boats. You're out there. You know, we can see on YouTube. You know, you're out there in the dinghies with your silver locks just flowing in the wind, there, mate. So you love getting into it. You love getting into a lot of things, to tell you the honest truth. But we'll bring one of those things in later on. So, what's the passion for you, mate? What do you love about the sport?
That's a very good question. I do just absolutely love it. I mean, there are so many things I love about it. I mean, I suppose the main thing is that I've done it for such a long time, and I loved it as a kid. And I have no idea why I loved it as a kid, because I didn't swim. I didn't learn to swim until I was a teenager. I was pretty frightened of falling in the water, and so I was always pretty rubbish at taking on, even in my teens, at taking on sort of complex, tricky boats like international 14s and the rest of it, because it just meant I was going to swim. And so, but I did learn to keep a boat upright in pretty extreme conditions. And it's one thing that now I'm pretty good at. And we have our best results. So my daughter and I race together. My daughter is my long-suffering crew, my favourite crew. She's actually the person I've sailed with longer than anybody else, actually. She's 20, how old is she? 28 this year, and we've been racing together on the circuit since she was 11 or 12 in our various boats.
And do you sail the RS with her now? That's what you're actively sailing with her now? Yeah.
Yeah, we've got an RS 400 at the moment, which is the second one. And for people who don't know what an RS 400 is, it's a asymmetric kite with a big canting bowsprit. But it's a hiking boat, not a trapeze boat. So we've had two of those. We've been racing that for the last 10 years. One year we'll learn how to do it properly. We had the smaller one before that. We had an RS 800 as well, which is the twin trapeze, the sort of smaller version of the 49er. But yeah, I love it. I suppose the thing is, to answer your question, I mean, I suppose apart from the sensation of sailing and all that kind of stuff, I suppose one of the things that I love most of all, and I think I feel it most when I'm sailing with my daughter, if I'm honest. Sounds a bit drippy, but it's the shared responsibility. And in sailing, I do quite a few other things, which I suspect you might want to come on to later. But one of the things that struck me about sailing, even as I get older and older, is it is pretty unusual and possibly even unique in sports, in that you have a shared experience where you actually rely on the other person completely. You can go and play football with your kids. You can go skiing. You can go horse riding. You can go cycling. You do all these wonderful things with your kids and other people. And you sort of have to rely on them not to crash out and leave you in the lurch and not be able to get home. It's not quite the same as hooning downhill in 30 knots of breeze, knowing you got a jibe to get through the bottom mark. And if one of you screws up, you're in for a swim, and you've got to rely on them. And I should have known better, because I grew up with this. I spent my whole life doing it. And yet one of the biggest thrills I got when Ellie, my daughter, was quite small, so she was probably sort of 13, 14, and we were racing a RS 200, which is a pretty sprightly little boat, and realizing that she realized this as well, without saying anything. It's like, she relied on me and I rely totally on her. And I love the fact that as an adult, I relied totally on a 13-year-old to get us around. It's a really special feeling. And I think that's true whether you're sailing, I've sailed big boats. done all kinds of stuff on whether you've got a crew of 20 or a crew of 2, it doesn't really matter. It's the same thing. It's that shared experience and that responsibility, and that's what brings us together. And I think that's what makes us, I would argue, such a nice bunch of people, basically, as a sport, because we do have to rely on each other a lot. It's the main bit of it, unless you want to be a fin sailor, in which case you can do what you like.
Well, we may as well shut the show down. You've basically found the golden nugget that we've all been searching for.
I was going to say, Bicey, the inspiration's there. Now I've got an 11-year-old daughter, so I'm going to take it on.
Yeah, no, bloody hell. No, that's a fantastic breakdown, and
Absolutely.
that's probably what builds those bonds that we all have with those people that we sail with, because of that, consciously or unconsciously, right? Mm-hmm. And you've broken it down beautifully. I like that. Did you practice that a little bit, may I ask?
No, only every weekend when I'm driving home.
One day I'll be on Barkarati. I'll say
someone will listen to me at some point. Someone will.
Consummate communicator.
There'll be a couple of people who listen.
All right. Well, so you've done, as you said. Let's just continue on the sailing piece just first. Not talk about the media side yet. The joy of your life on the media side is that not only are you been able to sail, but you've been able to be at pretty much every major event, and so you know as much as what's going on as anyone. So, do you have maybe a preferred event or preferred boat that you like? Like, where's your heart lie? If you were sort of said, you got to pick one boat, for example, and one event.
Crikey. Well, I'll go for one event because that's easier in some ways. Although none of it's easy, because I honestly am as happy at a dinghy event reporting on that as I am at the America's Cup or a Volvo or the Route de Rhum I find them all absolutely fascinating. But anyway, it's not much of an answer, is it? If I had to pick one event, I think I would say that the one that has really grabbed me more than any other is the America's Cup. And I hadn't realised why. And I grew up listening to the likes of Bob Fisher and the other journalistic greats talking about the America's Cup and being fascinated by it. But of course, it was never here, as you all know. It was never in the UK. So it was always something that happened somewhere else, pre-internet, pre-proper TV and the rest of it. So it was always a bit sort of mythical and a bit sort of weird. But anyway, it wasn't until I went to my first Cup that I realised how intoxicating that event is. And it's very interesting looking at the comments that people leave, on Planet Sail and all over the place, and the comments that you just see in the media, people responding to it, who get it polarizes opinion. There's a lot of people who really can't stand and hate the politics and think that it's ridiculous and outrageous. But once you've got into it, as you guys all know, that is all part of the game. That's the level that it's played at, and no one's forcing you to do it. It's not public money either, generally. In most cases, it's private individuals' money. And if they want to spend obscene amounts of money in our sport, then I'm all for that, because I'd rather them spend it in our sport than someone else's. But that's not the reason I like it. The thing about the America's Cup is that it is so intense at every level. It's just... It's unbelievable. If you're a storyteller, like I hope to be, there is a story in every aspect of the Cup, whether it's the racing on the water, the building of the boats, the politics, the crews, the firings, the scandals, the shoreside thing. I mean, it's amazing how it goes on, and it's all just so extreme, and it is totally and utterly intoxicating if you're a reporter or a storyteller or a program maker. It's absolutely fascinating. And I do get it that on the outside, if you're not lucky enough, and I've been extraordinarily lucky, if you're not lucky enough to get into the heart of it, it's difficult to understand what the hell's going on when actually all you want to do is to tune in and watch some racing. And I do get that. But as an event, that's the best one. As a boat, crikey, that's so hard, because I love speed machines. I love development. I think that's probably what I'm most interested in is advances in the sport and speed sailing. I am very interested in speed sailing, but I love offshore sailing and I like inshore racing. It's really hard to pick a boat.
Okay. That's a great answer. There's an obvious question that has to come from the America's Cup statement, and we'll come back to it a bit more, but I do want to ask a question. You've covered a lot of the America's Cup. Have you ever found or you've discovered or come up with something, inside information, a story that is a genuine story, but you've been asked not to share it and you've sat on it?
No, but I don't think so. But I thought you were going to ask a slightly different question, actually. But and of course, in a true politician style, I'll listen to what your question is and answer the question I wanted you to ask.
Perfect. That's what we want.
Because there's a lot of that going on up in the UK at the moment.
You're learning from some of the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to have a party. I'm in a work session tonight. But
yeah, I was there, but I didn't know what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Stories that I had to sit on? No, not really. But there was one that got. In particular, well, lots actually. There's quite a few that got me into trouble, but one that got particularly contentious in the America's Cup was in 2007 in Valencia, and I wrote a story which had the headline "Does a Lingy have a canting keel?" Well, of course, this was when they were the big monohulls with 20-ton bulbs on the bottom and the rest of it, and canting keels were reserved for Mocha 60s or Open 60s as they were known then. And there was some talk going around that that a Lingy had got some device to some structure down below whereby when the rig peeled over to leeward, it actually it pulled the keel up to windward just a little bit. It was only a tiny bit, just enough to twist it sort of up. But as you guys all know, in at that level, those boats were so refined that millimeters were what mattered, and it was fractions of a percent that people were looking for. And it was a very odd story. It was one that I felt quite uncomfortable about in many ways because I had some. I'd been tipped off by someone. I'd then been put in touch with a couple of people, sort of insiders, who were actually apparently showing me details of this design structure. And the reason it was so contentious was it would have been, well, I don't know if it would have been completely illegal, but it was certainly contentious, and it was going to cause a huge, great row. And I've been shown confidential stuff, details about the design, and went ahead and sort of wrote it, and it caused a massive row. And the reason I felt uncomfortable about it was not causing a massive row, because I can do that on a Friday night the minute I walk in the door, so I'm quite used to that. But was that I felt like I had an uncomfortable feeling that I'd been used, and that there was something else going on, and someone was trying to get at someone else, and I was being used, and I didn't like that. And it is actually a very good example of the intensity of the cup, because again, I go back to if you're not in it, then it's difficult to imagine it if you haven't experienced it. But it is, the cup will use anything it possibly can, in its competitors to gain an edge, and that's the bit I love about it. But sometimes you find yourself being caught up in it, and it can be quite uncomfortable then, because at the end of the day, you've still got to be able to go and talk to people and go and report, and you can't afford as a reporter to be excluded and barred from going in and talking to them. That would be a complete waste. But it was an entertaining, that was an entertaining one. But there were plenty of others like it, but that's the one that really springs to mind.
Hey, Matt, it was pretty easy to jump straight on the media side, but we didn't quite get the transition between you're sailing around with the old man to actually now jumping into sailing media. How did that happen?
Oh, yeah. Well, that is a very bizarre thing. So as a kid, I always wanted to be a yacht designer, and ignored the fact that I was absolutely rubbish at maths and anything else. But I wanted to be a yacht designer. How hard can it be? A pencil and a piece of paper and a love of boats. What else do you need?
Well, quite a lot of paper. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Bicey's designed another boat.
Yeah, so I always wanted to be a yacht designer. Long story short, went to college, failed most of my A-levels, all of them actually, bar one, and just about sort of scraped through. I did have a bit of a family crisis, actually, which didn't help. It's probably not something we want to labour on now, but sadly lost my father in the Fastnet in '79 in that big Fastnet.
Wow.
And when we were racing together, so that was quite a defining moment for me. We were doing the Fastnet, and I got back and he didn't. But that's a whole different story in itself. Many people will already know that one. So that was quite a shock to the system. But much to my surprise, well, actually, no, not to my surprise, probably everybody else's. I still wanted to carry on, wanted to be a yacht designer. Went to the Southampton, managed to scrape into what's now called Solent University, but down in Southampton, and did the yacht and boat design course down there. Absolutely loved it, scraped through that, got out the other side, but actually realized during the process that I was a rubbish designer. In fact, a lot of us realized that we all want to be racing yacht designers, as everybody did, but actually we could only count. We were out at the pub one night and saying, how many yacht designers are there in the world? Because we all wanted to be Bruce Farr. We all wanted to be Ed Dubois, Ron Holland, those guys. And we were counting up how many good racing yacht designs were. And we couldn't even get to 10. This was in 1983. And we couldn't even get to 10. And we were churning out 30 a year from Southampton. So we sort of realized that the chance of us being a designer. So I ended up moving into mast design, and I worked for Proctor Masts down here in Southampton, initially as a designer, but then I ended up on the sales side, and then I sort of technical sales. So I was sort of straddling between design and sales and sailing boats, because I was racing IOR boats back then a lot, and I realised that actually the bit that I was good at was not the design, because my maths was dreadful. But what I was good at was being able to make the link between, I knew enough of the technical stuff to understand and relate to the designers and to go back to them and say, this is what we're trying to do. We need to do a float drop. And so we need to be able to have some way of doing this, or other bits of design. But I could relate to the designers, could relate to the customers. And I really enjoyed that middle ground bit. And I say that because I ended up doing lots of talks, wrote some articles and bits and pieces, and really quite enjoyed going around and doing talks to yacht clubs and doing the sales thing and being the link, and I loved it. And someone said, you should write a book. And I thought, that's ridiculous. I can barely spell my own name, let alone write anything. Anyway, they did persuade me to write a book. And then it was a very technical book called Sailing Rigs and Spars, published by a workshop manual company called Haynes Workshop Manual. Is very famous certainly in the UK, very famous company. And wrote the book, and then thought, by that stage I'd been at Proctor's for 9 years, and I thought, people were asking me to write articles in Seahorse and various other things, and it was all about technical, it was all about rigs. It was when all the Whitbread boats had ketches and spindly multi-spreader rigs that would just fall down at the drop of a hat, and the rest of it. There's a lot of things we were trying to make.
Don't sneeze on the poop deck.
Exactly.
Over she goes.
They shouldn't have stayed up. None of these things should have stayed up, and often didn't. But anyway, I was writing lots of articles about those and made the mistake of thinking that I'd sort of somehow transitioned into being a writer, and then answered an ad in Yachting World for a technical editor and thought, I'd like to do that, and got the job and thought, that'd be good. That sounds really cool. My main job's going to be now testing boats and writing articles. And that was all fine until I realized very quickly indeed that I could not write to save my life. I could write a technical article about something I knew really well, but writing about, I knew what I wanted to say, but I never did any English arts subjects at school at all. I'm not sure I really did anything at school, to be honest, when I look back on it, but it was, I absolutely scared the living daylights out of myself for 2 or 3 years. And I just had my daughter then. And, or maybe it's just a bit before that, but I was thinking, what the hell have I done? I cannot do this. I was absolutely crapping myself for 2 or 3 years, thinking I've completely wasted it. It was so hard getting to where I got to, and now I've blown it. And then managed to learn how to write a bit. And gradually, after 5 or 6 years, started to enjoy it, and then gradually enjoyed it more and more as I sort of understood more and got less intimidated by the experience of writing, and to the point that I love it. I absolutely love writing because it allows you to sort of express your way in a way that I can't. I'm not very good at talking because I'm quite a scrambled brain, but when I'm writing, I can tell a story in the way that I'd love to have told someone face to face.
Is that what you found with experience? You sort of gain that sort of ability to relax and sort of express what you're trying to say, rather than and just sort of talk about the actual, topic, and just relax a bit and yeah.
Yeah, well, I think so. I think the thing is what really helped me, and what I say to other people who ask, how can you do it from a writing point of view? To me, if there's one word that is so valuable for any kind of media, whether it's writing or TV or radio or what have you, it's authentic.
Yes,
it's about authentism, and if you're authentic, if you come across as authentic, whether it's a podcast or writing or what have you, then you're in. That's it. You need to talk the language of the people you're trying to talk to. It's so important, and it's missed a lot, and it's where things sort of go wrong. And so I say that because, going back to what you guys were saying very kindly about, my enthusiasm for being in the sport, as far as I'm concerned, you've got to be. I mean, why would I not want to be out there sailing these boats if I want to be telling stories about it? It doesn't make sense to me that you could do it. I'm sure people do. I know people do it without actually having any knowledge of sailing. And quite often they're extremely, extremely good writers, and they have writing skills that I envy. And there's plenty I can think of out there. Well, not plenty, but there's a number I can think of out there who are brilliant writers, but not particularly, that they can't get past a certain stage because they don't actually sail. So they can't talk that language. And it's all about connecting with people.
Never.
You can pick that up through commentary as well, right? You can definitely tell the people, e.g. Ken Reid commentating in the America's Cup. You instantly, especially as sailors, you instantly have a connection that and he knows what he's talking about. And I think that goes across then to the general public as well. So, that's a fantastic point.
So where's have you ever done a story, whether it was testing a boat or something like that, where you've ended up and you've just gone, this is as good as it gets, I remember I tested...
February 2014, I believe the video was aired. VX1,
wasn't it? You talking about that VX again?
Second best boat.
Yeah, no, I got to test a Devotee D1 on Lake Garda, from Australia, which was, and I remember driving into Garda from the northern end, just going, this is about to be one of my best experiences from someone's paying me to come and do this, And have you had an experience like that?
Oh, yeah, lots. Lots. I suppose one of my favourite ones, my favourite stories was sailing. There's two that stand out for me, that were defining for me. One was sailing L'Hydroptère. You remember the foiling trimaran? That was the French thing, way ahead of its time. For people who don't know, it was about a 50 or 60 foot long?
50, I think.
Yeah, I thought it was
50, wasn't it? Yeah, with a couple of little sponson floats either side, but whacking great big angled foils that went down, and it was designed to be an offshore foiling machine, and it was a proof of concept type thing, and it was very clever. When you look back, it was so far ahead of its time, and trying to do it with soft floppy sails, and anyway, it was an amazing machine, and it did actually go on to hold the world sailing speed record eventually, after trying for a long time. But I was fascinated by it because I was fascinated by design, and I was asked by them to if I'd go down to the south of France because they were doing some trials down there. It was near Toulouse, no, not Toulouse, Toulon, near Toulon. And would I go down there? And I thought, fantastic. Went down there, did this story and sailed with them. And it was basically a northerly, sort of a mistral. Well, it wasn't a mistral, but it was a northerly. And we were sailing backwards and forwards and hammering backwards and forwards. And it was really quite an eye-opener, this whole experience. And because I was getting used to doing 20 knots. I don't think I'd ever done 20 knots at that point before. And this thing, when it got up on its foils, it was hammering down there. Anyway, we were going backwards and forwards. We had a photographer on board, Richard Langdon, and the two of us were there. And I just thought, what an experience, because gradually I was crapping myself as usual. But the graduates started to get used to 30 knots. And they were all pretty relaxed about 30 knots. They were still talking about what they'd been doing last night in the bar at 30 knots. And I was thinking, you really should be concentrating. We're doing 30 knots. This is quite dangerous. But they didn't start concentrating until it got to the high 30s, low 40s. And then I could see why they all concentrated completely, because the thing was just lethal at that speed. It got this horrible nodding sensation, where pitching sensation, and it felt really uncomfortable. It was pretty frightening, and they were pretty scared as well. But anyway, the point of it was that they were so comfortable at 30 knots, and I was just sitting there thinking, and that's right. And I had to go. I was down there for 2 or 3 days, and then I had to go back. And they say, "Oh, you should stay. You must stay. We think we're going to break the record. We're going to." And all they had to do was to get over 50 knots, and they would have had the world record at that stage. And I thought, what a story that would be to be there. And I had to be back here for something which was annoying. Anyway, in the end, I decided that I had to come back. But I got back, and 2 days later, they didn't quite break the record. They did actually hit a peak speed of 60 knots, but they pitch poled the thing and destroyed it the day after I stepped off. So I was actually quite fortunate with that one. But the thing that struck me about that boat was that when I was sitting on it and we were doing 35 knots, I was thinking, what other speed machine, what other outright fastest sailing vessel in the world or record-breaking machine would have a fat journalist with his lunchbox and an inboard diesel engine on board? Because that's what the Dropped Air had. It was just an amazing machine.
Yeah, wow.
It's what an experience.
As you brought that, I just actually brought that up here, and it talks about the day they pitch poled it.
Yeah.
So they reached the 60 knots and capsized and turtled shortly after.
Yeah.
Capsized and turtled.
They pitched poled the whole thing, and it was they couldn't get they couldn't dump the jib quick enough, and it was the jib ultimately that took them in.
And then they got in 2009, they got the world speed record, like over 500 metres, because all that other stuff was under 500 metres, at 53 knots. Even that is
pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It made such a noise as well. It was like that.
Hey, Matt, when you were there on the boat and you were sailing around even at 30, or let's say 35 knots, and you were going, did you actually in your mind think that the world is going to end up, or sailing world is going to end up where it is today? Like with that, because that was the start of it, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, I'm not sure that I thought that that's where we would end up, but I'm not trying to sound cocky or smug here, but I'm not surprised it has ended up there, because it's been. I know a lot of people who've been watching. In the last decade, we've had this massive, or less than a decade, we've had this massive development of foiling, particularly in big boats, accelerated largely by the cup development and the rest of it. But I've been following foiling and Weymouth Speed Week and all that kind of stuff for a long, long time now. And you look back to the sort of 70s down in Weymouth, there's a lot of foiling stuff going on down there. So it's been bubbling away in the background for a long, long time. The thing that's held it back, like in so many other aspects of the sport and so many other sports as well, is materials. It's the new materials that have allowed us to do things that simply weren't possible. There were lots of valiant efforts by crackpots, basically making things out of scaffolding and thinking they're going to foil across Weymouth Harbour. But you could sort of see where they were trying to get to. But what they hadn't done was figure out whether it was actually even possible to do it with a bundle of steel all bolted together. It simply wasn't. It's never, ever going to work.
That's how actually Jordan got from Papua New Guinea. He just bundled a bit of bamboo together and rode it across.
Yes, that's pretty much it. So with all your stuff, getting on to sail that boat, have you had the chance to get on to any of the America's Cup boats or the Sail GP boats? Have you had a ride on those, the modern winged form?
I haven't sailed. So I sailed the AC45. When did I last sail them? Bermuda, 2017. I sailed on the British boat with Ben a bit. Foiling on that. That was before we went. I have not sailed an AC50. There's not really a place for a fat man to sit there. I'm rather extra medium. I take up a lot of space. I might not be very tall, but I make up for it in girth, and it can't fit me in. and they don't need hiking. So I'm sort of pretty redundant. Really. Don't have any other skills.
Well, you can talk about it, promote it, so that they use that.
Yeah, you try talking about it at 40 knots, they can't bloody hear you.
Yeah, exactly.
Spray going in your face.
Hey, Matt, so obviously as media, you kind of have to remain quite neutral, but do you kind of get taken under Ben's wing a little bit, especially at these cups, and you get a bit more of an insight from Ben as opposed to Jimmy or any of the others? Or it's quite
Not really.
This generation's quite open in that regard, or closed for that matter?
Well, probably the latter, to be honest. No. I mean, as a team, no. The teams don't. None of the teams show any kind of sort of favoritism, and that's not the case with the Brits. I'm sort of hesitating because it's so they don't, as a team, sort of say, "Oh, right, Matt, you're a British journalist. You're just around the corner. I know Ben very well and known him for a long time, and sailed with him on and off with all kinds of things, mainly in a reporting role, but we've sailed in other roles as well." And so I do know, I have over the years, I mean, not now, but I have over the years known lots about what's been going on there. But it's really because it's just on my patch. It's not because they've made a beeline for me and thought, okay, let's make sure we get him in there. It doesn't seem to happen like that. And the strange thing is, I'm probably going to, yeah, I probably shouldn't be saying it in a way, but it's because I just get myself into trouble. But the last cup was extraordinary in this time last year down in Auckland, because as you all know, obviously New Zealand was shut. There was no one there, and there were no journalists there at all. Well, there was two of us. There were two people who were journalists. There was me and an Italian chap, and I was also working for the organisation for the host broadcast TV as the news producer. So I wasn't even totally independent in that role either. But the point was that you go into the media centre where you'd normally expect to see 100 plus people. There was about 4 Kiwis, me and an Italian guy. That was about it. And some staff. There's nothing else. And the trouble was, it's what made it really hard to report on the last event. It was great fun to do, but it was hard and different because there was no media pack down there. Normally, and it's one of the great things about any of these major events, is that the media all have connections with various people and team members and blah, blah, blah. And so the gossip goes around, and that's all part of the fun of it. You get chatting to people and you get a bit of a lead and you think, oh, really? Is that right? So you get to hear what's going on. It is a proper network. And there just wasn't one in Auckland. There just wasn't one. There was no one around. And I was having guys, friends of mine from up here and journos, and giving me a ring in the night saying, so what's the buzz down there? I said, there is no buzz. There's just no buzz down here because there were no journalists. There was no chatter. The bars might have been open, but there was no one to go drinking or chatting with in the evening like you normally would. Yeah. And the teams, in a way, whether it was deliberate or not, the teams didn't need to perform any kind of sort of media function, not in the way that they would normally have done. Normally, you would expect, the media would be invited to go round for an informal coffee or something. You can go in and they'd have you round one morning and say, you can't write about any of this, but it's just really just to get to know you and you to come and see what we kind of do, but you can't write anything about it. It gives you a bit of background. There's none of that. Not one of the teams invited anybody around, either of us around, I should say, at any stage. And it was just really, really weird. And it wasn't sort of divisive by them. It wasn't the teams sort of just moving on to another level where they're being Captain Grumpy and just not talking to anybody. It's just there was no need to have a media output there. And things have changed a bit now as well with social media and in-house teams, and the rest of it has changed the way that stories come out. But it was a very, very strange cup to report on compared to some of the others. It definitely, much as I absolutely loved it and felt extremely privileged to be there at the time, and still do, it was a very hard one to report on it because it just didn't have the circus atmosphere that we're used to with the cup, which is one of the things that makes it so special.
Yeah. So I'm just imagining the media centre there. Be pretty easy to cater for. Yeah. You've got 4 coffee pods and 4 tea bags. That's your ration. That's your ration for the day, boys.
Yeah, and don't bank on that if I got in there first, because I just went and scooped up all four chocolate bars, and that was it. If you got in after me, there was nothing left.
So
I was more thinking about the sort of the media frenzy over news. You know, how it is. You're saying with 100 people, it's like a frenzy. I'm just trying to listen to or trying to think about how you created it with 2 people.
Yeah, well, it was. Yeah, yeah. I think the thing was what helped. I mean, having painted a sort of rather sort of not darker picture, but what helped that last cup was the extraordinary technology and racing that we saw. And one of the things that came across really strongly, and I've gone on about ever since, is that, and at the time really was what did make for a very special atmosphere was, for the first time in my experience, and that was the 6th cup that I've covered on the ground for all of it. That was the first time that absolutely no one, the sense of relief after the very first few events just before Christmas, the sense of relief within the whole circus was undeniable, because there wasn't a single person, be it in a team or an observer or a builder or a race management person or whoever it was, there was no one who could really, with any great confidence, any confidence at all, guarantee whether this was actually going to happen or not. Yeah. You know, we thought, and when it did, and when I say when it would happen, I mean, one was just getting to Auckland in the first place, given the state of the global pandemic and everything else. That was a big enough challenge. But even setting that to one side, the technology, unproven. You know, the pandemic had forced the cancellation of the 2 previous events. So by the time we get to Auckland, no one has actually raced against anybody else. And as we all know, having worked in this sport a lot, particularly at the advanced end, you can go out and test and train and nurse the thing around and come back and prove the thing works. It's very different to when you put your foot to the floor and the red mist of competition comes down and suddenly you start sticking your foot down and the thing just explodes in front of you. And part of me thought that was what was going to happen in the cup. I obviously didn't want it to happen, but, you know, no one knew. No one. The sailors, the teams, the designers, none of them really knew. And the sense of excitement at seeing boats going around a course and completing a course and finishing on the same day and in the same number of bits, generally, unless it was an American boat. But, you know, it was made it really exciting. And again, that was very odd, because when I got back and sort of started to talk to friends back here and what have you, and people had generally really enjoyed it, one of the things that people did not complain about, but comment on and said, well, you know, racing wasn't very close, was it? I mean, it was a bit dull. You know, the boat that won the start won the race. And I found myself being quite defensive over that, saying, well, hang on a minute, it was an extraordinary cup. But actually, when I'd calmed down a bit, you see it from their point of view, think, yeah, you got a point, fair enough. I mean, in straight racing terms, there wasn't a lot. But the excitement down there then, that every day we went out, we as a sport went out into the unknown, and B, actually had some meaningful racing and some results, and basically didn't lose very many races at all, and didn't lose very many boats either. I mean, one obviously spectacular implosion, but apart from that, you know, I thought it was going to be a bit like San Francisco in 2013, where, you know, up until what then became one of the closest and most memorable cups in history, it was a game of last man standing. It was like, if you can get around the course, yeah, job's yours, mate. You've got the win for the day. Well, that's not racing. And of course, everybody just switched off. And I was worried that's what was going to happen, but thankfully it didn't.
But based on those 6 cups that you've attended, and having more than 2 people in the media room, what's the most memorable? Like, as far as just you think back now, and it's like, oh shit, that was so good to be at.
I think
good or bad, actually.
Well, they were all extraordinary. I think actually working backwards, the least, the biggest anticlimax and ultimately in the end the least enjoyable, which was a surprise to me, was actually 2000 and 10, the dog match between the cat and the cry. And because I got so excited about that, being driven by technology. I love the technology, and I'd sort of been on both boats. I don't think I'd sailed them, but I'd sort of been on board them and been around both the Lingy and Oracle, and I've been out to the States to go and see the wing when it was still secret and blah, blah, blah. And I was so excited about it, thinking, this is going to be amazing, going to be amazing. Of course, it was anything but amazing, really. I mean, it was amazing that they stayed together and they got across the line and they didn't just, explode. And, of course, a lot of that development, well, it's not a lot of it, but a fair bit that went in behind the scenes is stuff, knowledge and technology that is now being used later on down the line. So it's all part of a journey, but that was a massive anticlimax. It was freezing bloody cold in Valencia. It seemed to be dark all the time.
Yep.
There was a really bitter, nasty atmosphere there. And anybody who knows the story of that particular cup will know that it was a very unharmonious, bitter, twisted event. It was the nasty side of the cup. And so that was a bit of a disappointment, because that had come off the back of an extraordinary 4 years building up to 2007 and the 32nd America's Cup, which had seen more challenges than ever before. I think I'm right in saying that, but it certainly was a massive circus. It was the first time that the Cup had been in Europe. It drew a massive audience. It was just fantastic. I was there for 4 years, pretty much, on and off for 4 years, and then in the end, for the last 4 months, I was there full time. But I was backwards and forwards there a lot. So that was an amazing experience there. But they've all been good, because Auckland in 2002, 2003 was my first, blew me away, absolutely loved it. Valencia was another level. Valencia, second time around, was disappointing. San Francisco was really disappointing. Again, great technology, great promise, fantastic area to sail, blah, 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 but bitter disputes behind the scenes and boats breaking up, and then a tragedy. It was a horrible one, really, in the end. And then Bermuda was weird, because when we were there, no one else was, because there's no passing trade through Bermuda. So it was great to be there, but that probably lacked more. That lacked a lot of atmosphere, actually. That was a really disappointing one in a way. It was a beautiful place to be and some great racing, and was very exciting, but it wasn't a carnival. I didn't see, not really.
So in your mind there, what was the difference? The fact that the version 5 boats were so close and it garnered a lot of teams to be on the start line, or it was a matter of circumstances, e.g. first cup being in Europe and that excitement around that, compared to the multi-hulls and all the technology, and no one quite understands it from a public point of view?
Yeah, I think all of the above, actually. I think Valencia was a coming together of all kinds of things. I mean, the one element, I'd agree with all of what you said there, Nick. The one element that's missing there, the extra thing that made it possible, was that there were so many of those, what we call version 5 boats, but those IACC boats. There are so many of them around. You could go and pick one up for peanuts and go and put your hat in the ring and go and be part of the circuit. And of course, you can't do, people talk, that's where people, I think, miss the point at the moment, is that people keep harking on about, well, we've got to have, loads of teams. It's not as good as it was in Valencia. You're never going to get that. There isn't a surplus of these AC50s around. There's a couple to buy. That's it. Apart from the fact they cost an arm and a leg and they're really difficult to run and the rest of it. But in Valencia in 2007, you could go and pick up an old one, like teams did, like Plus 39, not Shosholoza, but Team China. Other teams did buy boats for very little and managed to get out there and compete. And that was great. And so it did make it look good. And bringing the event to Europe, the thing about in Auckland in 2003, when we had a British team, GBR Challenge down there, I went down there. I was there for the whole thing. I was down there for 7 months, took my family down and lived down there for that time. Absolutely loved it. But at that time, there was a lot of money sloshing around in the corporate world. And the idea was that they were going to fly down loads of people and bring them in to watch the racing. But in the end, if you were coming from the Northern Hemisphere, it was pretty hard to come down for anything, to be away from home for anything less than 2 weeks if you wanted to see 3 or 4 days of racing down there. And that's quite a big ask to get people to come down on a business trip and not bring their families and blah, blah, blah. So it didn't really work out. They didn't really get the corporate sort of wave of people that came in that then wanted to sort of follow it through to the next event. In Europe, it was different. In Europe, you could slip out the office at 5 o'clock, jump on the last flight down to Valencia, be hosted down there, flown in, get trashed on the night you arrive, go out with a hangover, watch the racing, and then have some more champagne and some more booze and some more food and some more banter, and then go and see the boats as they come in and have a nice big dinner, and then head back the next day and be home before anybody had missed you. You could just say, I missed the train on the way home and, got stuck in Bournemouth. So you could, loads of people were able to go. And consequently, there were thousands of people that legged it just out of the UK. And that's what made that event so special, was that, I think anyway, in the Northern Hemisphere anyway, it was the first time that people were able to get a whiff or get close to and get a feel for the Cup. And what a Cup, even if the racing wasn't as good as we know it could or should have been, what an event to go to, where you had all the challengers, a big circus and everything else. It did a lot for the sport.
There's an obvious question that has to be asked, right?
How many Kiwis? Sorry, Jordan.
I was just going to say, there's an obvious question that has to be asked here, Matt. All the America's Cups you've done, all the inside knowledge you've got, this is the time where you can stand up and just show people exactly how connected you are and what you know. Where's the next Cup?
There's going to be at Spinnaker Sailing Club just down the road from here. It's a nice little gravel pit. It's not too much tide. It's fine, no tide. God, that is a really tricky one, isn't it? I mean, we've all been through this several times before, but this is probably the hardest one when it's come to venue, I think, because from what I see at the moment, and this is only me speaking, I don't really there really isn't much inside information, but it's really hard, isn't it? The choices, for those who are not sure what the choices are, in Abu Dhabi.
Malaga. I've heard Malaga.
Yeah, so we got Malaga, and then possibly Barcelona and Cork and Auckland and Saudi Arabia. Oh, what's the name of the port in Saudi Arabia? Yeah, gone straight out of my mind. Anyway, come back to me. That's pretty rubbish, isn't it? But anyway, the point is that Saudi Arabia, from what we can tell at the moment, is the only country that's really got the money to do it. But there's all kinds of issues as to why people might feel a little reluctant to go there. It's a tricky one because, and that's based on, their human rights record and blah, blah, blah. But it's also where we've just had the final Formula One Grand Prix. So it's not like major sporting events don't go there. So, and I'm not advocating it. I'm just saying, that's what happened. It's going to be difficult. But that's the only one that I can see, from what I hear, that's got the money. All the others have got big problems with funding, or are certainly a long way from having the kind of money right now that they need to be able to say, yeah, we'll do that. So it's really hard. I mean, Cork in Ireland's been talked up an awful lot, but from what I hear, they've got the same problems as others, as sort of raising the money to host it. And one of the problems that the extra pressures that hosting a cup puts on venues is that it's not just, or it hasn't been, unless we find a different way of creating a different format. But the cup generally, as we all know, is you need to take up residence in the place where the cup is going to be held, because you need to be able to train and develop and train and tune, plan, and everything else in the conditions that you're going to end up racing in. And never has that been more important than when you're talking about boats that do 4 times the wind speed, and you get an increase of 2 or 3 knots, and suddenly they leap into another performance curve. So, and also foiling boats, we as a sport haven't really yet perfected foils in waves, and Cork's got plenty of those for anybody who's been out there. You head outside and it's far from flat water. This is not the Iraqi Gulf. You're pretty much going straight out into the Atlantic Ocean. So it's not great venue for that, really. And you can't do it in the harbour because it's not big enough. And then, as a very good friend of mine who lives there was telling me, he said, the trouble is we don't have much of it. As you know, we've got a very green and pleasant land, but we don't have much of a summer. We don't have... So
got a couple of days here and there.
Yeah, a couple of days here. Blink, you miss it. It's a fantastic place. My family comes from there. I can't rubbish it. Or I wouldn't rubbish it. I love it there. But it's not the kind of settled conditions that you sort of need for this kind of event. So it's going to make it very hard for teams to be able to base themselves there to get any meaningful testing out of it. And then it just strikes at the whole viability of the Cup there. So I think that's quite a big challenge. And also from a venue point of view, they need to get a return on their investment as well. So they need to be able to have that circus in town for, one of the reasons it works at these other events is that if you can get it, if the Cup is set there for, for a year or what have you, and the buildings are going up in Valencia, it was almost 4 years, but they built the buildings after 1 year. So they had about 2.5, 3 years where the circus was there and you could go and sort of see it develop and see things happen. And that definitely increased tourism and it put Valencia on the map. There's no question about that. But holding an event for 2 or 3 weeks in the middle of the summer let's say a month, middle of the summer, that's not going to boost tourism long term for somewhere like Cork. And the kind of money they're going to have to put in to do it makes it really difficult to see how it works. But I hope it does. But Malaga's the same problem, but like Barcelona's got a similar problem, although they do have more settled conditions than the rest of it, but then they don't have much wind. Fortunately, the one thing that plays into the Cup's hands is that if ever there was a time where we really don't need much wind to get boats going snot-gobblingly quick, it's this generation of boats. We can see that you can have meaningful racing in 6 or 7 knots of breeze, which is quite extraordinary.
So, Matt, you took a while to get there to give your answer of exactly where it's going to be because you know exactly where it is going to be. 1, summer-type conditions. 2, flat water.
Yep. And 3,
money.
Money, yeah.
4, a lot of room to build stuff and the capacity to build. 5, tourism, this place particularly doesn't really care. 6, not much wind. It's going to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Obvious choice.
Well, it's, I don't have any experience. I've never been there. I've got no idea what it's like. But, well, who knows? Wasn't it didn't American Magic say that if it went to Jeddah, they wouldn't be going? Or am I getting that mixed up? Maybe I dreamt that. I thought that the New York Yacht Club had said...
I think initially when there was talk about going to the Middle East, there was that discussion. As for where New York Yacht Club sits now, not terribly sure, but obviously they've just been accepted as a challenger. So, who knows?
I wonder...
Could be quite a bit of Amway. Amway's about to take off in Saudi Arabia, I hear. So the backers could quite like to go there.
I wonder whether, and I have thought this before, but maybe it becomes even more likely this time around, is that maybe this is the time where we see a format change. And this is only me guessing again. I really don't, this is not part of any intel I've got. But it makes you wonder whether in the past we've had America's Cup World Series, so we've had a travelling circus that has gone to various locations, which again, in the 30-second Cup, that was the first time that was tried. And it was very, very successful. And we went to 3 different places with these boats and it was brilliant fun. And the Cup was on tour. It showed it around. It was great fun. And what it lacked, unfortunately, was any meaningful points or any meaningful racing at the end of the day, really. What it needed to count somehow. But they were really struggling. They tried really hard to make it count, but to find a way of doing it. But it's so hard when you've got to weave it into, as we all know, you've got to weave it into the structure of the Cup and the deed of gift and the set rules that you have to abide by. But I can't help thinking that maybe one of the ways, and we might get to that, and the AC40 in build at the moment, this one design foiling 40-footer may be one of the pathways through, is that if the Cup could find a way of having some meaningful racing that counted towards selection later on, then it might take the heat off and the pressure off these big venue deals that need to be struck, which are costing an absolute fortune, that require huge investment in infrastructure, and then leave, an Olympic style legacy, or not quite as big as that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It leaves a massive legacy and a potential white elephant in the sport. Maybe the way forward is that somehow the pre-selection or whatever it is a lot of the hot racing moves around from place to place in AC40s. It would tick a lot of boxes for what people would like to see. I'd argue that's not what the America's Cup ultimately is about, but it does help you get there on the selection front. It would, we'd be advancing technology. We'd be having boat-on-boat racing, which is what people do like a bit of, and the cream would rise to the top, and we would know we'd have the best teams at the top. And then for the final couple of rounds of it, you get into your big, expensive AC75 toys and go and do the last few rounds towards the cup, and then have the cup itself. So it could be done.
It's pretty easy. Dolts could give Russell a call. Look, I've got an idea. Your top 4 teams will be eligible to race again.
Well, you joke. I mean, it's funny you should say that. It's sort of, I think there's a serious side to that as well. That I'm not that they're necessary. I don't know if they've actually had the call, but it's interesting that right now, one of the things about SailGP that's so interesting is to see so many of the top names going into SailGP. So Ben's in there, Jimmy's in there. Anybody who's anybody is in SailGP. And I was talking to Ben about it a little while ago, saying to him, just before Christmas, I think, saying to him, why are you putting so much into SailGP? Sure, it's a distraction. You've got a big boat to build and a Formula One team to get used to, and the rest of it. And he said, show me where else I go for that kind of level of competition, at that kind of level of technology. He said, show me another boat.
For an extended period.
Exactly. He said that's where everybody is. That's where the technology is. That's where there isn't anything more advanced this side of the cup than SailGP. And I thought, yes, good point, well made. And as I watched it, because I've been working on SailGP quite a bit for the last year, so I do a lot of the feature producing for TV for them. And it's interesting. The more you watch it, you think, do you know what? You look at these AC50s hammering around the marks and the corners, you think, actually, technically, they're really not that different to an AC75, really, to the monohull. We're just talking about blades in the water screwing around. Okay, the platform on top is a bit different, and I know there's some fundamental differences in that the rudder isn't aligned with the foil in the way that it is on a multi-hull and blah, blah, blah. But we're still talking about foiling machines, and it's basically the foils that are in the water, and it's all about balance. It's all about control. It's all about this new style of racing, new sets of skills that require a three-dimensional mindset and ability that is taking sailing into a very, very new territory, which, as it happens, it would appear kids are really, really good at. I wanted to get that in, but maybe we'll come back to that. But there's not that much between SailGP and the Cup as it happens.
Not at all.
I would love to see them somehow. I'd love to see them get closer together. Well, morph. I don't know if morph, but something like that to come closer together and make better use of the amazing opportunity that we've got in sailing right now. We've got an incredibly well-funded Grand Prix circuit with the best names in there and some really high-performance boats. The racing is getting better and better, I'd argue, in SailGP. It's still not perfect, but it's getting better and better. It's getting really exciting. There's all kinds of things I'd like to do to it if I could. Not that I ever will be able to do to it, but I'd like to see the races longer for a start. But there are all kinds of things you could do. But anyway, that's just sort of tinkering with it. But the fact is that we've got an amazing circuit there that I think somehow it would be great to see it work alongside the Cup and work with the Cup.
Good point.
Hear. Got that, Russ? Got that, Dolts?
Yep. We know you listen.
All right. Well, we've got a problem, Matt, with you. Is that what we expected coming into this discussion was that we were going to have fantastic discussion and great stories, as we always do. But we knew we'd chew through time really quickly. We've got two options. We just create and just keep going and going, or we come back to you another time and we do a part 2 with the great man. That's what I think we're at to be honest, because there's so much we haven't touched on. But we
mate, take that cup discussion and talk Volvo Ocean Race.
Yes, that's right.
That's another episode in itself.
Yeah,
For sure.
So, Matt, what I'm proposing, mate, is would you be amenable to coming back at another stage? You know, we could do the part 2.
Yeah, if you can put up with a fat man ranting for another session, I'd be very happy to.
Yeah, I think we could do it.
Listeners, votes, please.
Yeah, so now. Uh-oh, there's your answer. Oh, well.
Yeah, they want,
Bravo.
they'll
Thanks
want
very
3
much.
sessions. Yeah. No, Matt, I think we've actually run through the time that we've got. So, yeah, I think we'd really like to do that. It's been, I know for me, it's always great fun listening to you, having a chat with you. So, and the fact that we did just concentrate in so hard on the Cup does open up so many other forms of discussion now, the Olympics, the dinghy stuff, the ocean race. So we might go for that process, and we got your special passion to talk about still. We're keeping that secret, mate.
Yeah, okay. I won't mention it.
Oh, cool. So for the listeners, just a reminder, www.planetsail.co.uk is Matt's website. And his YouTube channel is Planet Sail, and it's fantastic. And if you want to find a whole bunch of information of what's going on, it's regular production. There's lots of events. I think your latest one came out yesterday or the day before, I reckon.
Yeah.
And so...
And haven't you just won an award, Matt?
Yes.
Or been
No, I got nominated.
nominated?
Yeah, it's been nominated for TV production something or other. Yeah, by the Travel Media Awards, which I'm very excited about, actually, because I wasn't expecting it at all.
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic.
Because you were the only bloke travelling in the media over the last 2 years, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there's this other Italian guy. But,
He's in it as well.
He won it. No, we're harsh. But yeah, so if you're cool with that, my friend, well, that's how we'll roll.
Yeah, happy to. Very happy to.
All right, mate.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you,
good.
Matt.
Great
Fantastic.
to catch up.
Boys, well, that was fun, wasn't it? Because I spent a lot of time with Matt. I remember being at a regatta. We were there together for a few weeks, and I had breakfast with him every morning, and we just talked stories non-stop, and it was just like going back to breakfast. I nearly went and got my
talk
weekend.
anything apart from the cup.
We did. We talked so much stuff. A lot about his real passion.
That's his real passion, which I
No
believe
one knows.
will be coming up soon.
Yeah,
Yes, it's a secret.
So we're going to go again with him next week, part 2. We're going to first
Well,
time
that was the segue. That was the segue. It's
Yeah.
a secret. We're going to tell everyone about the secret passion, and that's next week. So how cool is that?
yeah, and get
Ah,
into
good.
a lot.
But
of
obviously a bloke who's not only been around yachting, but like he's fully engrossed in it as a reporter, as an editor, as an observer. So he knows the ins and outs more than, anyone. He should plan it. He's one of the, got his head in the game more than anyone in the planet.
Yeah.
Hence planetsail.co.uk.
There you go.
There you go.
Nice plug, Boise.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so more next week. Can't wait.
Nailed it. Yeah, part 2. It's our first part 2.
Well, in saying that, though, there's probably a few things he should leave out or we should edit out when we start talking about the Volvo Ocean Race, okay?
No, I think we want to know. Because I know you two blokes have had a fair bit to do with Matt over the years, and I'm pretty sure there's some cool stories. So let's bring it up.
Anyway, let's move on to club events before this gets tied down. We've got any club events?
Let's.
Yeah. Well, go on then.
Club events, what's going on?
Well, it's 18-foot skiffs, isn't it? Didn't we decide that in the off-air discussion about how we're going to handle this situation?
So professional, BP. Yeah, so 18-foot skiff national champ started yesterday. One race on Saturday, 2 races today, and then continuing throughout the week. Always interesting. It's good to. The reason we bring it up because it's good viewing. You can go to 18-foot skiff TV and watch all the racing. You can watch it live
Yeah.
or just stream it on the YouTube. It's there. It's good fun. 4 weeks.
I heard there was a bit of wind around.
Yeah, it's been windy the first few days. Yeah, small rigs and lots of boats bouncing, a lot of capsizes. The JJ start in 4 weeks, which is their world champs. I'm not sure that it's going to. The Kiwis have been dominating the worlds the last few, so I doubt any of them will be able to make it over. So it will probably be Sydney, Queensland boats, but still be interesting. A lot of attention on it. It's good to see. What else? There is a chance we might be there at the JJ's, boys. We've been approached to be part of the entertainment.
Really? Not just another thing you're telling me on the spot.
You miss that email, BP.
Yeah, always. So, as I said off air, I'm head down, ass up. Anyway, all good. Sounds fun.
We've been asked. That's nothing more has gone from that, but that's all. Yeah. But anyway, I reckon what we might do though, just as I spoke to Sammy Newton. He was pretty keen to come and have a chat on the show, and I thought might just before the JJs because he's part of the Sail GP as well.
Yes,
we might get Sammy on just ahead of the JJs. That'd be a good discussion, I reckon.
Absolutely, yep. And just a damn good guy to have a chat to about everything. He's got a wealth of experience now. So, yeah, looking forward to that for sure.
Very cool.
So, shall we give a little bit of a plug, obviously, to what's going on? 3 races in to the national champs. Andu.
Yes.
Is, got themselves a handy lead with Sev Jarvin, Matt Stanton and Stenter and Sam Newton, as you mentioned.
Yeah,
well,
not a bad little fleet there.
How many national JJs did those guys win?
They won 7, I think, in a row.
Right. So they're leading at the moment on 4 points with old mate Jack McCartney in the Tech 2 team in second on 10.
Seems to be their happy number.
Rag and Sammy
doesn't it?
sailing on 14 points, equal third.
Yep, there you go. Big names.
Not necessarily tight at the top, but she's tight for the rest of the way.
Yeah. Definitely worth a watch. Very cool. All right, let's move on to the Jack Lloyd Listener of the Week. Another one that BP probably doesn't know about. We're not doing it on purpose, BP.
I don't think you do, though.
We definitely need a jingle for this.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I think we need a jingle.
And it's going to be Van Morrison, Van the Man. Jack was a big fan of Van.
Yes.
So we'll find something that suits.
Well, I'm a big fan of Van the Man.
As is yourself, Jordan. So, okay, we've heard this name numerous times on the show, and you'd say he's probably vying this year again to go for Listener of the Year.
Listener of the Year. You're just making that up as well.
I encourage him. He never stops ringing.
Listener of the Year. What is the Listener of the Year
week? May or may not get 2 merchandise packs. So it must have been another slow day on his vessel, and he's come up with, and he is John Schaefer from Annapolis, Maryland.
Good on you, John.
So, Shafe, he's come up with an absolute cracker. He's come up with what we call bar karate bingo. So he's basically sent it a 5x5 squares, and so these are the rules. So listeners can play at home, and it's for adults only. Cover the space when you hear the word, the phrase, or the topic. So I'll just start at the top left and just work across. Beer. So beer. Any reference to off the beach. Cover this spot for the F word if it's dropped. Pursuit race. Defender, as in the vehicle. Defender, as in the America's Cup. Use of the term Vice Commodore. Any reference to JSBP, NB getting pissed. The crickets.
The crickets. I think he means.
That's right.
Yeah,
Go on, put them on.
Any reference to Port Starboard, the red flag.
Yeah.
Especially when you wear your NB Scooters hat, PP.
Yeah.
Idiots. Not used in the intro. So any other time. Next one, cover this spot if someone is taking the piss out of the French. Then we've got a free space. Obviously ran out of one there. GC, the way Bicey uses it. So I think that's good.
Yes.
Samaritans.
Yes. Good people.
Cover this spot if you think Nick's moustache looks like a porn star from the 70s. So obviously when we were doing the Sydney Hobart stuff. Any reference to second best? Cover that spot. He knows as well.
Bingo. There's been 2 bingos spot already. Yep.
Cover this spot if Brett is too far from his mic.
That's really funny. What do you reckon going on there? I mean, I just was wondering what was happening. I've now been brought to life.
Next, cover this spot if there's any reference to the size of Jordan's head.
It is big.
Any word of the vessel, the rainbow? Someone spills a drink. Mention of where the treasure's buried, which is our tagline for the beer. How old were you when? ... Reference to challenger of record. Reference to Ginga challenge, and lastly, wine. Any talk about wine?
Any talk about wine?
I've got to tell you, Chafe, mate, you've nailed it.
It's very good. We'll have to publish that so people can play if they want.
I wonder, I believe, or he may or may not be have written a bit of a algorithm to pick up on the most commonly used terms.
That can become a sculling game quite quickly.
He's just got a bit too much time on his hands, our Shape, hasn't he?
Well, so John, congratulations. You may or may not be getting a merchandise pack.
Love it.
Yep.
Love it. Very clever.
Oh, Jesus.
Very good.
That is bloody good. Good on your show.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate.
It's hot time with Bice.
For the listeners,
Doesn't get boring, does
for the
it?
listeners, I pushed the tune, introing, and Bicey's eyes just went boom, like, oh no.
Forgot what I'm meant to be doing.
Where's the run sheet?
He's badly scrambling around trying to find something. Okay.
Trying to find my notes.
Are you right to go, Bice?
Yeah, I'm ready to roll. I'm ready to roll. No, I was just getting a bit carried away with the bloody bingo, and then I forgot about this. Rightio. Hot time. So no real storyline here, just kind of a few little topics that came up during the week and a bit off the hip. First of all, and this is a phrase mentioned on Scuttlebutt, actually. Who said this, gents? I refuse to join any club who'd have me as a member.
Oh. That was...
Love it. I don't know.
Jordan would have said this in one of your famous quiz nights.
I know, I can't remember now.
I refuse to be a member of any club who...
I refuse to join any club who would have me as a member.
It's like a Winston Churchill or a Marilyn Monroe or something like that, but I can't remember. It's someone... it's not a yachty, I don't think.
No, it's not a yachty. Answer is Gaucho Marx.
Gaucho Marx.
Oh, there you go.
That's definitely got to go into your repertoire for Jordan's famous quiz night. That'll probably be a second best question to... is it true that the New Zealand badminton team is called the Black Cocks?
Oh, that's a good question, that one. We use it regularly.
Yeah. All right. And the answer is yes, they were at some point in time.
Yes, that's right. It's a genuine, that genuinely is true.
Now, this is probably one for you, Jordan,
Yep.
Because I know you didn't get the video, BP. But during the week, the Ocean Race put out a video. Our friend Niall basically documented a trip from the UK down to Alicante, asking the questions, asking the hard questions. Now, I actually liked it, and it's worth checking out. And Niall is a legend at getting away with making things look not scripted. What were your thoughts, Jordan?
Look, it's obvious that the Ocean Racers said, all right, we better arc things up a little bit. And they need to get their message out because everyone's debating. So I'd say that was the motivation behind it. It was a bit heartbreaking to watch him fly a drone through the offices that you couldn't, a couple of years ago, you couldn't. There's no way you could because there's people everywhere. But the fact that they can fly drones through their offices, that was a bit.
1 year out. Yeah, exactly.
But I spent most of the video looking for our old friends. So we saw Maso come on. Maso, he's put on a couple.
Yeah, well, it's a European life.
It's missing you, boss. None of the paddling together. But anyway, it's good to see that they're trying to create some activity and some.
I think it's a bloody good way to try and answer the hard questions.
Yeah.
And they've got another episode of it coming out. I'm looking forward to see what that is, and that is a sit down with Richard Brezius, I think. And we're all seriously hoping that this can get across the line because and the race is a go, and it's gonna be full of the 65s and have the Omokas. As for what the real outcome is going to be, but let's keep our fingers, legs, everything crossed to make sure it does because it is
it's an icon. It's an
iconic race, and it deserves to continue.
It's got a lot of people's heart and soul invested in it. So,
yep. Rightio. So, listeners, go check it out. Just Google Ocean Race. What was it called? What's Going On? So, it's pretty good. Right. One final one here, boys. I've picked up on a bit of a theme after our interview with Will Oxley.
Yes.
It seems anything with a hint of controversy added to it gives a little bump in our numbers. So our next, still probably the most popular episode, Mark Roberts talking about the Etchells, the whole Mold 11 saga, about to be taken over in the number of downloads from Will Oxley, who has literally doubled what anything else we see within 7 days.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It is simply incredible. So I ask you blokes, should we change the name of our podcast from Bar Karate to Clickbait?
I was thinking about it today because I think a lot of people have come in and discovered Bar Karate, and we probably should explain what Bar Karate is for a lot of people. Yeah, most people know, but for those
probably
who don't,
a whole heap of new people.
Yeah, for those who don't, if you go to the bar after a yacht race, you'll have your beer, and you'll often see people discussing close interactions with their hands. I was on port, you're on starboard, and I attacked here and there, and all their actions are mimed out with their hands. That's Bar Karate. And that's where the name of the show comes from, because we see it in every yacht club in the world. We figure it's a universal language, Bar Karate, and everyone knows what's going on. So for those who've just discovered the show, you're welcome. And Bar Karate, there you go.
And still, just worth mentioning, still one of the best videos we were ever sent by one of our listeners. Like in the middle of Ireland somewhere, there was a pub quiz and there was a question about whether it was port starboard or something. And the barman is recording these two guys at the bar, essentially performing Bar Karate, trying to argue one way or the other. So it truly is a universal language. And for any of the new listeners out there, welcome aboard. Love you long time.
Is that it for Hot Time?
Yeah, that's it for Hot Time because there's one topic there which we didn't speak about prior, which I want to put on the list is I want to talk a little bit about your X2, BP.
Well, thank you. Well,
I want to hear the ins and outs. The listeners have heard you're in Indonesia. Just give us a quick brief overview of what's going on over there. We saw you during the week post a video, basically drawing a like a meat tray.
What was that?
Think.
It looked.
Tell us about it.
What was that? Because to us it looked like everyone was lining up to get paid, except it was a raffle and only the winner got.
No, it wasn't a raffle. It wasn't. Well, it was a raffle, but no. What it was it's a monthly thing that they do here, and one lucky person who has been at work full attendance for the 6 days or 5.5 days has to be at work for the whole month period. Can't have 1 hour off here, do anything, but their name goes into a draw and they get a month's wages.
A month's wages?
Yes. Now,
Jeez.
up here, you can imagine a month's wages up here. I mean, anyone's month's wages is, if you get a month's wages for everyone, it's like, wow. So it's all relative. So I got wind of this and I said, I've got to have a crack at that. And you have to understand here in Batam, which is an island about 25 miles south of Singapore, but it's still an Indonesian island, is where we're building the boats, the X2. And the factory XSP, run by a couple of Adelaide friends as well, Paul Patterson and Tim Ross, have been up here for a long time, and they're doing so much stuff. I mean, it's not just not just the X2. You know, they're doing stuff for lasers. They're doing stuff for, oh God, I mean, you could just list it off. Anyway, get this wind of this competition. I thought, oh, I've got to have a go at that. Bit of a laugh, and then, yep, fair enough. There it was, an envelope with however much money was in it. Draw the name out, and out he came, and there it was.
Mate,
it was great fun.
I saw the video, and you had a bar karate T-shirt on.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to give him your bar karate T-shirt.
Well, I can tell you, there's a lot of people who want one. But look, it was a real cool moment. I mean, he was, very happy. I mean, as you would be. But there's 120, 130 people working here.
Yep.
And of there was eligible, I think it was 50 of them had been here for their whole duration, for the whole weeks, for the 4 weeks of the month without having 1 hour off.
Well, you could definitely recognise the sheer joy, not only in his face who won it, but the rest of his colleagues as well. So that's bloody good. Good initiative.
Absolutely. And obviously,
take that on, actually.
Judging by the photos, your deck gear's on boat number 1 by the looks of it. So she's all laid out, all screwed in.
You know, as we sort of trudge through the myriad of things, we've got 3 boats on the go in various stages. Obviously, hull 1 is now ready to deck join. So we're basically dry fitting the deck tomorrow. All the deck gear has been dry fitted. Everything's dry fitted. Has been removed again, and then we're fitting tomorrow, and then by the end of the week you'll see a picture of a boat.
Cool.
X2.
Love it. What I'm interested in, BP, how's the food, mate?
Actually, funny you should ask. Wednesday was a bit average,
mate. When I've been in, the food is sensational.
Food's beautiful.
Yeah,
the food is beautiful. It's how your body adjusts to the food.
Okay, so the bumwee's not so good. Now, rumour has it.
It's not so much that. It's not so much that, Bicey. It's because you eat this, rice and lots of these little bits of food. It's kind of changes your whole functions.
Cool.
Yeah, but I haven't been sick. But I've been.
Using the.
Last night I did go out for a steak. I found a steak hotel.
So I have heard through Australian the grapevine that at XSP the facilities for the on-site project managers is basically located. You got to go via the office to get there. So rumour has it, in some offices they have that Facebook clicker as you're sitting there waiting, you join them on Facebook and you see the number go up. Well, apparently they've got a Facebook clicker there of you. Every time you go to the toilet, they're up to 479.
I wouldn't be surprised. But it's very funny. It's either a bottle of water or the loo. As I walk in there. So they look at me and smile every time. You got to walk past them. There's 3 girls there working in the office, and unfortunately the toilet's right next to them. Don't know if it's poor management or poor design, but it is what it is. But it's really not that bad. It's the food is beautiful. I love it, and the culture, and you got to be fully immersed when you do these sort of things, and it's definitely what we're doing.
Cool.
And that's what XSP is doing the same. It's and to have 120, 130 people working is it's not a small project,
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, we're all looking forward to seeing that thing on the water, mate. So, keep your eyes peeled.
Yep.
Cool. Something I spotted just before, World Sailing are pushing to have sailing back in the Paralympics in 2028.
Saw that, yep.
It's just been announced. So all the best to World Sailing with that one, and all our Paralympic sailors or hopefuls. Maybe, just maybe, it'll be back in, which would be fantastic.
I
Ready
am
for Bris Vegas?
Yep, Bris Vegas. Yep.
For all our Northern Hemisphere friends watching the Winter Olympics, we are too. We have no idea what's going on, but we're watching. It comes on every 4 years, and we watch these strange sports that mean nothing to us. But good luck to you. Don't think
You're really
we're
good
troubling
at
the
something we
scores.
don't know anything about.
There's a couple of sports here I'm not a fan of, but anyway, it's all good.
Curling.
I just wonder how cold it gets running
curling
around in
or whatever
tights.
it's called.
No, curling would be fun, I reckon. Curling and a few beers would be just a ton of fun, I reckon.
Sweeping
Mate, you do not need me on ice
with a few beers under the belt.
trying to send a bloody 20-kilo stone down the other end.
It's called a kettle. Thank you.
Oh God! All right. Did you guys see the Laser Performance? We'll all remember Laser Performance was involved in some pretty heavy litigation around the laser dinghy, and it was right in the midst of all the stuff. Now we call it the Ilka. They've released.
You can go buy one from IKEA.
Yeah, an Ilka from IKEA. They've just announced a new boat, the Port Star.
Oh,
Port Star. So the story behind that is Laser Performance in Portugal, designed, created the whole thing. It's a single-hander main. It's all carbon epoxy jobby, and it's got wings on it that move in and out. So it looks a lot at the back like a Devotee D1.
yeah. I was going to say it looks like a D1. Yeah.
Yeah, for those who know, it doesn't look like it's got a spinnaker. I found this really interesting, and it's got 3 different weight sizes. It's got the lightweight version, which is it's a 6 metre rig for people below 56 kilos. It's got the medium version for a 7 metre rig for people from 57 to 68 kilos, and the heavyweight version for an 8 metre rig for people above 69 kilos.
Heavyweight. Heavyweight above 69 kilos.
Probably not the smartest thing to go to Portugal, our good friends in Portugal who we love dearly, and get them to decide what a heavyweight is, because
Well,
Mate, geez,
clearly
been on the
they
piss.
weren't on the diet I was when I was in bloody Portugal.
yeah,
Eating every pig
say-
known to man, piece of pig known to man.
come on.
But 69 kilo, yeah, interesting. I think that's not the only thing that interests me. The name.
Oh,
I think they've had a shocker there. And
well, I'm trying to.
It does not
Port
translate
Star.
that well. So,
I'm wondering.
I can see a few things. We've got Port, which is either Portugal,
Yep.
or Port, which is left, and Star, which is starboard, potentially.
Oh,
Oh yeah, you got that one. Yeah.
I just kept going to Porn Star.
I kept thinking it was like a stutter. Like
any
Port
other
Star.
Westerner. Any other Westerner is like, oh, they've cocked that one up.
Well, I mean, hopefully it's a great boat and it does wonders and rah. But
I guess the measure will be the accessibility, right? And
It's like everything in it.
having one of these on the water for, I don't know what the price is, but you'd like to hope it's reasonable to just get people out there and having a crack. But who knows?
It's probably why the D1 didn't really hit its ranks, because of the price. It was definitely a price issue, getting.
And interesting, Jordan, you and I will only get this, probably no one else, but it's funders are Lisboa 2020, Portugal 2020, and there you. We've worked for a company like that before.
Yeah.
yes. Best of luck to our Portuguese friends. We love you guys. So, yep. Yep. Great country. Let's see how the boat goes. I'll have a go if someone gives me a
I've
shot.
just picked something up on the website.
Yep.
Hashtag don't miss the shift. I like that. Port Star. Don't miss the shift. No, I'm back on track. No, I think it's a fantastic boat. And I think
What are you laughing
mate,
for?
I can go back and forth.
Yeah.
Don't worry about me.
Oh, dear.
Sit on the fence. You're a fence sitter, are you?
Right. I think we're nearly through everything, aren't we, boys?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think we are. Just
Are you-
the last thing I was going to mention is that I think we need to send someone to the Sail GP final.
Yeah, do you want me to call them up?
No. Let's assume something may or may not happen.
May not happen.
So if it was to happen and not to waste their time, we should do a little rock, paper, scissors between the three of us to see who's going to go.
That won't go very well on a podcast.
Well, it will when someone wins. All right, ready? Here we go.
Yeah.
Ready, you listeners?
Ready?
One,
You be
two,
good.
1, 2, 3.
I can't see yours, Bicey. What you got?
They both went scissors and I went rock. See you, boys. I'm on my way.
Yeah, you're off to Sail GP. Hey, and it's true. It's true.
No.
You are going. You are.
Yeah,
and that
we'll be
even-
having.
That wasn't rigged.
I'll be there. Yeah, we're definitely. I think we're going to make a Barkarati
Represent.
presence. Went to the money tree, and Barkarati. For $1 million, there's $1 million being handed out, you know. And I figure when the Aussies win it,
You want to be there?
Which
Be a
one?
good party.
Which one? You figure all the coaching tips you've given over the last year, you should be able to get a little bit of coin.
Hey guys, remember me? Oi, I'm over here.
No, it's me.
Yes, fellas,
Yes.
it's me. You know I love that job.
You know that starting technique?
Imagine all the new listeners just going, "What are they crapping on about?" Just go back to some old eps. You'll discover it all. You've got a great journey.
I'm
ahead
back
of
to Joe Rogan.
You've got a great journey ahead of you. All right, boys. I think we're happy.
Yep.
Yeah, well done.
BP, break your guitar out.
Yep.
Okay.
Get her out.
I'll get it out.
You're the whole band. For those new to the show, this is Brett Perry.
Original.
Wrote, played.
From Studio BP.
Really,
From Motorbike, BDP.
really interesting BP.
Fun by BP.
People can make all these
Play.
jokes about not putting your mouth to the microphone that you recorded the song so well.
I know. I managed that, didn't I?